Thank you, Mr. President. I think if there was any doubt about the love that so many had for Her Majesty, it was dispelled in the streets of Scotland this morning. A country that has long been known for its republican sentiment showed that it really did love Her Majesty the Queen. The streets of Edinburgh were filled to capacity to greet the hearse carrying the Queen to St Giles Cathedral. And yesterday, as the Queen's body was carried from Balmoral, every village, every town that it travelled through, the streets were filled, and I'm told that in some of those towns, in fact, every single individual who lived there was on the streets to farewell their Queen, and that is not exactly a surprise to anyone, because she was someone very, very special, very, very special. And of course, what we have seen in Scotland over the past 12 hours or so will be nothing compared to what we will see in London over the next week. And I'm told that queues are already forming to pay tribute to Her Majesty, and some people are expected to wait up to 30 hours to pay their respects. Again, extraordinary, but not surprising. And I think it is safe to say that if the opportunity had arisen, we would have had the same response here in Australia, because Australians also loved Her Majesty. I had a very deep feeling of sadness as of last Friday morning when I reached over and read on my phone that the Queen had passed, and that sadness has not left me. Has not left me at all. In fact, as I stood there today, swearing allegiance to Charles III, I felt that sadness really welling up, that she was really gone, that our Queen is no more. We knew at some stage that this was coming, but not yet. I knew that it was coming, but I didn't want it to come yet. I remember her mother lived to 103. I was hoping she might outdo that. Sadly, that was not to be. And that sadness was probably summed up perfectly by a rather tearful woman on the television last night in the streets of Scotland, who was asked about Her Majesty. And through those tears, she said, "She was a part of my family." Yes, she was. She was. I felt exactly the same way. She had been there my entire life. You know, she became Queen 9 years before I was born. And I remember at primary school saluting the flag and singing "God Save the Queen," "God Save our Gracious Queen." I think it's a great pity that we don't still do that, to tell you the truth, but things change, and not always for the better. Not always for the better, and that is a great pity. Our Queen was a woman of huge dedication and huge commitment. Even last week, we saw her, and you can't help but think that she'd set herself for this, to see off Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, and to welcome Liz Truss. And it was the next day, in fact, that she left us. I think she'd even then she felt that it was her duty to do that. She'd done her duty. She then felt free to go to her eternal reward and to be once again be with the love of her life, Prince Philip. Now, That dedication and commitment is nothing new, of course, from Her Majesty. You've got to realise here was a woman who had enormous responsibility, probably the most enormous responsibility of anyone in the world, was put on her most unexpectedly at just 25 years of age. 25. Now, you know, Prince Charles has had a lifetime to prepare him for this. I'm sure he'll do a good job. But Her Majesty was in Africa at the time when her husband came to her and said, "You are the Queen. Your father has died." Now, not only did she have to cope with the grief of losing her father, and those who have lost their fathers will know just how debilitating that can be, but she then had to step up immediately to be the Queen, and she did that. Magnificently, absolutely magnificently. Today, I'd like to express my gratitude for a number of things. Firstly, to the good Lord for loaning her to us for so long. I'd like to express my gratitude for Her Majesty's strength, her inspiration, her example of true leadership at a time when true leadership is desperately needed. I would like to express my thanks for her contribution to peace, particularly in Ireland. And I heard just this morning, becoming of Irish stock myself, Irish Catholic stock, and a few years ago, somebody of my ilk would not be here saying these things today. But I'm in Australia. I'm not in Ireland, and Her Majesty did marvellous things for Australia. But her contribution to peace in Ireland is certainly worth mentioning. And the unity that she was the symbol of throughout the Commonwealth, and I think possibly throughout the world, is something that we should all be very, very grateful for. The King has said that he will follow in her footsteps. I think that's a very good move, if I might say so myself. And I think that whilst I have not always agreed with some of the views expressed by Prince Charles as he was, I think that King Charles has put in a faultless performance since he took over on Friday. And as I said a moment ago, I think he will be a very, very good king indeed. I will long remember the contribution and the life of Her Majesty, of Queen Elizabeth II. She was, and it's really hard to say was in terms of Her Majesty, but she was a shining star in our world today. She was somebody exceedingly special, and somebody who just knew what to do, even though some members of her family may have done a few things over the years which would have taken her attention away from the job at hand. She knew what her role was, she knew what her task was, and she did it to perfection. I express my sympathy to the King and to the royal family on behalf of the people in Melbourne's West, many of whom are also mourning. On behalf of my party, the DLP, and behalf of my own family, we are deeply distressed by the passing of Her Majesty, but we know that she is in a better place, and she is being rewarded now for the tremendous work that she did over 70 years, and we give thanks to God for her life. May she rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Tierney.